Flosstube. It's Arlene here. It is Thursday, October 16th, 2025, and I'm glad to be back here. I know it's been a while. I meant to double check, but I'm pretty sure my last video was in mid to late August when I had some new designs released. And life. I usually try to do a video about once a month. For those who know me, well, if you are new, welcome. Thank you for finding me. If you are new, welcome. Sorry, if you have been here before, welcome back. In addition, I've been stitching my whole life. I also design. I design under the name Works by ABC. And I stitch my own models. And so what that means is that I often don't have stitching, like current stitching to share in videos. When I first started doing Flosstube in 2017, which was like just a couple of months before I decided to launch into this designing idea, I had like years worth of things that many hang on my walls and so on that I was excited to share with this new community of stitchers that I'd found. But nowadays, I mean, I guess I could start revisiting some of those older ones. Anyway, so in my other life, I am a teacher. I'm not like full-time in a, full school. I do a lot of tutoring. I do a lot of like oddball timing things. And so I get to videos like in between students, sometimes during the day. I work online with online school. And sometimes the beginning of the school year, it's hard to kind of get back to different routines. I mean, that's true for everybody, like if you have kids and everything. But combined with some other factors, I had a great trip out to LA for a weekend with my sisters, just everything. Anyway, I had this goal that by mid-October, and I guess depending how you define mid-October, 16th is good enough, I would definitely be here because I have some exciting news to share. And if you follow me on Instagram, you've seen some teasings of this over the last few days. Last April, it was right after Nashville. I exhibit at the Nashville Needlework Market, and it was soon after Nashville that I started working on a project, and it was one that I was sharing, like Instagram, and again, I'd have to check, but I'm almost positive I was showing it on my Flosstube videos. I mean, I feel like it must be in the, thumbnail. Anyway, I finished it, and I said I was going to put it out as a pattern to share with all of you, and today's the day. So for those who are familiar with me, I love to tell stories. I love to share background information of my designs. I love it when I am stitching other designers. I love to know if there's a backstory to it. So let me jump right in and share the main details, and then I'll fill in the backstory for those who are interested in. So this right here is my new design. It is called 365 Remix. Now, what? What is that? Well, if you recall, again, if you're new, welcome. This was a design I released at Nashville this past March. It is available in my Etsy store. It's available in stores. It is called 365 A Year in Stitches. And it is 365 different circles. They are all different, stitched with 365 different DMC threads. And I loved it. I loved doing this. Now, all right, now I'm jumping into story. Like, here we go, release, but now let me tell you a story. So where did the inspiration of this come about? Well, the previous year, in 2024, I released this design called 324. And yes, I'm holding it correctly. And I was blown away still to this day of how much enthusiasm there is for this. How many people have been stitching it, have wanted, like, it still blows me away. And as a designer, I'm so grateful to know that people are interested in my work. And again, this is available in my Etsy store, and it is available through LNSs. I'll put links below. And one of the comments that happened when people started working on this, it's 324 different colors of DMC. And you can see half of them are done like as a little motif, and the other half are just a solid square. And some of the fun things that were going around online when this came out was stitch one a day and you're going to be done in less than a year. And so I went with that. That became the inspiration for 365. And if you can see, I mean, for me, just focus on the reds. I purposely, there we go. They're not the same size. Purposely kind of just wanted to orient them a little, basically opposite of one another. I cannot do this straight. You get what I'm doing here, right? I don't hope you could hear what I just said. But after 324 came out, I had started working on a project that, in genuine all honesty, was just for me. It was like I needed a little break of my cross stitch world. And in my life as a stitcher, while certainly cross stitch is a lot of my focus in these last few years as a designer, I have always stitched all different types of needlework. And I've shared here on Flosstube things like blackwork and hardanger and canvas work and all of that. Speaking of canvas work, so I had this idea that I wanted to kind of go with this, but think about it in terms of canvas work. Now, we'll talk about sort of, I got so many things here, sort of a definition of that. But what that turned into was this design here. And so, let's see if I can hold these up. Here's the original 324 all cross stitch. Here is a new version of it, and you could see with all different types of stitches. Now, again, I started working on this as just something for myself, knowing that the majority of people who follow me on Instagram and on Facebook and all that, who know of my designs, know me as a cross-stitch designer. I have done some blackwork designs, including one that I came out with just this past August, which I was really pleased how much enthusiasm there was for it. I know blackwork isn't huge within my typical audience here, but I loved it. Back to this. I'm getting off on tangents. Please forgive me here. So I was posting about it. So many people were saying, where can I get a pattern for that? And I knew I better put out a pattern for it. And I did. And just like the original 324, I was blown away by still to this day, blown away by the interest of people who wanted to stitch it. Many of whom have commented to me, I've never done anything like this before. They appreciated my pattern and the details that I went to making sure, because I knew I was putting out that pattern, as I am with the one I'm going to talk a little bit more about now, to a mostly cross-stitcher audience who maybe have never seen charts. Like I needed to make sure the instructions and the diagrams and the charts were able to be understood by someone who has never seen that kind of charting before. You could see I had these both framed using the same frame. And so when it came time to doing my new version of 365, of course, I wanted to use the same frame as the original cross-stitch version. And I love how they turn out. If I had 4 hands, I'd be showing you all 4 of these at the same time. Probably within a few days, if I can remember, I do want to post some pictures on Instagram of all 4 of these together, because I think it is pretty cool to see them. And you can see the size differences. I mean, they're not the same size, both in terms of physical size as well as stitch count. But now that you've got the background, let's talk a little bit more about this. It is, first, the 324 version I called 324 the sequel. And this is kind of like a sequel. I couldn't use the same name. That would just become too confusing, even though the numbers would be different. And so that's where I came up with 365 Remix. It's a remixed version of it. You can see all different stitches. I shouldn't say all. There are 92 different stitches, and they are each repeated 4 times, with the exception of the center. So for example, if I take this stitch, just to take this guy right here, in a rotated fashion, that same stitch is here, that same stitch is here, and that same stitch is here. So it's like a whole rotational, it's rotational symmetry, the math teacher in me wants to say. And it became a fun little challenge to make sure there was no way I was going to come up with 365 different stitches. But this idea of 92, which is plenty, was a fun challenge. Also, because this was the second time I was doing something like this. And this time I went into it thinking, yeah, I'm going to put this out as a pattern. And truthfully, so let's go back to Nashville in March. I was sitting with a friend of mine. We were talking about how things were going. It was breakfast time. And it was saying how I thought I wanted to do another version of 365, this different needlework style, but I didn't know if there would be as much interest, let alone any interest, like whether all the people excited for sequel was sort of like, okay, that was cool, one and done. Um, and then I decided, you know what? It doesn't matter to me if other people want to stitch it. I wanted to do this. And so, of course, I'm putting it out there to see if any of you want to do it as well. Because the sequel, I went into not thinking I was doing as a pattern, but this one I did. I made different decisions to make it easier to put out a pattern and to make it what I feel like is a little bit more clear cut. And so I just want to walk you through this pattern to help you see it. I'll be honest, it costs more than a typical cross-stitch pattern because it's not a typical cross-stitch pattern. There are 24 pages in this, and so that alone gives you an indication that it's different. And I just noticed, see the sun? I've talked about that probably every year I talk about this, the skylight that's up there as the sun moves, as we're moving into fall, or middle of fall. This light is going to get further and further up. You can see I've already there's usually stitching on that shelf sitting up, and I've already laid it down. I meant to put it up for the video, I didn't. But you could see this needlework hanging on the wall is starting to get into the direct sunlight. And so I usually hang I don't take it down because it's such a pain to get it back up. I usually hang like a sheet or a pillowcase over it, and it looks funny, but whatever. Back to where I was. So I want to walk you through to give you a sense, especially if you have not done or seen the sequel at all, if you have no idea what a chart like this might look like. So of the 24 pages, only 12 of them are what I might call the chart. And let me just get to the first page of it so I can show you. So this, and you can see all the stitches are basically made up of straight lines. So some cross stitchers would look at this and say, oh, it's just a bunch of back stitching. Other cross stitchers might look at it, and especially squares that look like this or like this, they'll say, oh, that's black work. Some people who have been familiar with different styles will understand that my spirit of it was canvas work, which is kind of a catch-all term. Needlepoint, what is the difference between needlepoint and not needlepoint? We could have a whole separate rabbit hole discussion on that. Basically, call this whatever you want. So this chart is done so that you can see the basic lines. I have made it so that the columns are all labeled by letters and the rows by numbers, and you'll see how that coordinates to another piece in a moment. And I've tried to make it really clear. Each box represents one fabric thread. Now, normally, if you were a over 2 stitcher, even weave or linen, you might look at, I'm just going to do these 4 boxes here, and think, oh, I'm going over 8 threads because you're going over 2. You need to kind of get in a slightly different mindset. Now, Well, I've provided you with a better explanation of what I just said really quickly. And this picture, I'm hoping, helps you see. This model was stitched on 25 count Lugana. And on 25 count Lugana, it works out to be a little less than 12 by 12. It's 11.75 by 11.75 inches. Can you stitch this on other fabric? Sure. If you go bigger or smaller, obviously it's going to affect the size, especially if you go to an Aida. And again, I've written all this out, but this just gives you a sense. This is a square on 25 count Lugana. This is what it would look like on I use 14 count Aida. So just keep that in mind. Aida stitchers can absolutely do it. You just need to be aware size-wise, it's going to be much larger. So I've given this explanation. You get, hold on, again, let me just show you one of 4 pages. This chart, again, here are the letters and the numbers that tell you the names of the stitches. This was something I didn't do in the sequel. Some of those stitches I pulled from stitch books. I have on my shelf it's out of screen, but over there mostly, is a lot of books that, again, many needle pointers would hold on to, of different stitches. And when I was doing that one, it was a little haphazard. I made up a few on the fly. This one I did in a very purposeful way. I wanted to have a source that everyone could, if my diagram was unclear, and sometimes it is hard to make it clear, that there'd be something that everyone could access. And without too much difficulty, I came up with the answer to that. So let me explain using this guy right here. So on this chart, I have said that this one right here is going to be stitched in 553, and the stitch is called stepped fishbone. Now I picked that one in particular to show you because the best I could do with charting it, I have some gray lines and black lines, but I know it's not showing up very clearly. You would look at that and say, huh? But I've talked about before this amazing resource online, free. There's no membership or subscription or anything you need to get for it, called the Stitch Bank, put out by the Royal School of Needlework. And every stitch that I have chosen to use can be found on the Royal School of Needlework Stitch Bank, free website. And so there we go. There's that stepped fishbone. And what I love about this is you get full-on, step-by-step pictures on how to do it. And in most cases, even a video. Now, I know when I go on here, I'm like, okay. What I also love, let me get to the top, you can change from photo to illustration. And let me just skip down to where it's in the middle of things. So here we go, illustration. And boy, is that much, oh wait, yeah. You know what? I'm sorry. It wasn't, I'm on the wrong page. Sorry, hold on. I need to be on page 2. No, page, hold on. Because I'm like, that's not stepped fishbone. There's one more row on top. There it is. It's this guy right here. And again, that looks confusing, but when you see it charted out for you like that, it's great. And so, yes, I did get to the point of trying to find 92 different stitches that would work. The Royal School of Needlework Stitch Bank, I'll put a link below, again, free open website, they're up to about 500 stitches. Now, a lot of them would not be appropriate for this kind of thing. Just think embroidery. If you're familiar with, or if you're not familiar with embroidery, like in our cross-stitch world, we stitch on a counted thread. You count fabric threads. When you're doing sort of traditional embroidery, you're outlining a design, but you're on like more like regular cotton fabric that you might use for quilting, although hopefully you understand what I mean by that. So to find 92 stitches that would work, and I was also, in my math brain, recognizing that I was making squares that were 12 by 12, 12 fabric threads by 12 fabric threads. And some of the designs, or some of the stitches, just wouldn't work for that size. So there are 4 pages that make this chart that shows you exactly, square by square, what stitch and what color DMC. Now, as much as I tried to stick with the way each of these were diagrammed on the Royal School of Needlework Stitch Bank website, I had to make some adjustments. And so I started to keep track. And if you notice, I didn't pick stitch, but if you notice, a bunch of these have a little asterisk after the name. And that's because they show up on this list. And this is my list of whenever I did something different. My general thing is I stitch all these using only one strand, but there are a few exceptions to that. Shows up on this list. There are some of these squares that it's really hard for me to show, or for me to get my stitching program to show what thread goes on top of which. Like I was running into problems that I feel like I need to check in with the developer about how to adjust things. Anyway, so I was able to say, like here's an example, refer to website for correct layering of the stitches. So you have this list that okay, I don't understand Arlene's diagram here. It is one of the ones that is starred. Let me go look up Milanese and make sure, let me refer to this about what it is that Arlene did different from the way it's charted online. The ones that are not on this list are charted, I stitched the way they're showing up here. So this whole idea of a stitch reference, I'm just like so pleased that I made that happen so that this pattern all put together, I'm hoping I get the feedback that it's all the more clearer and easier to follow. A stitch map, so you can see 12 pages for the chart, list of all the DMCs. I'm hoping you can see by what I'm showing you, this takes a lot of time and effort to put together a pattern that looks like this. A lot of my cross stitch patterns, sure, there's absolutely time spent designing, time spent stitching, adjusting, creating a final version of the pattern. This is on a whole nother level of creating a final version of the pattern. It is available on my Etsy store now, as of the moment I put this video out, both as a paper copy or as a PDF. Like I sell all of my patterns. I make this clear in the Etsy listings, but let me just make it clear right now. If you are a Pattern Keeper person, I am not. I've never used Pattern Keeper. I've had some friends show it to me. I'm an Apple person. You can see the chart is made up of straight lines, i.e. backstitching. And to my understanding, Pattern Keeper does not show up backstitching. If that has changed since the last time I talked to anyone about it, awesome. I know a lot of Apple people use Markup RX, something like that. I feel like some folks have told me that backstitching does show up. I have not tested this, so I'm just being super clear about that the Pattern Keeper lovers can still do this. They just will need to kind of approach it a little differently because they won't be able to my knowledge, be able to get it into Pattern Keeper. So I think that was everything I was going to say about this. I hope there's interest in it. And you know what? Even if there isn't, I enjoyed stitching it. I enjoyed the challenge of coming up with the different stitches. I loved revisiting all the colors that I had used in the same way. And again, I have all four of them sort of surrounding me on my lap and so on. It's just been a lot of fun. And they are just a fun, colorful way. All four of these use only the first 17 columns of DMC. The DMC color card, hold on, I don't want things to fall over here. Up here is my non-real thread color card. My real thread color card is downstairs, but for what I need to show you, it works. So the DMC color card looks like that. These last couple of panels are some of the more specialty things and the overdyes and so on. But if you take these, which is made up of 20 columns, I forget, I'm seeing it backwards. 20 columns. The threads that are involved go up through column 17. These last three columns are not the most beautiful colors, and so that's how it is that I chose to stick with the first 17. So there you go. 365 Remix is now available for those who would like to jump in and give it a try. As an offshoot of that, especially if you have stitched 365 or you were all interested when I first put it out, I did something last fall that some people called me crazy, but I'm glad I did it, and I think I made a lot of stitchers happy for it. I made thread packs for 365 with 365 different colors of DMC. I was selling thread packs with 1 yard of DMC, and I sold out of them. I'm so glad there was so much interest in that. When I was making those up, I was buying individual skeins. I was doing it myself. It was like a long-term project, but I'm glad I did it. I had a little fun with playing on the coupon thing with Michael's and Joann's, which sadly is closed, because with coupons I could actually get the DMC cheaper than I could buying them wholesale for the numbers that I was using, for what I was using. Now, A DMC skein is, I meant to have one sitting out here, but I thought I had, what do I have here? Oh, I can use this. A DMC skein is, oh, I'm looking for the thing that shows, here it shows. Can you see that? It is 8 meters, which translates to 8.7 yards. Now, I was making 1 yard packs. Do the math. I was ending up with a 0.7-ish of a yard left over for all the skeins that I broke up like that. And I kept those aside. I didn't want to in any way confuse full yards with not full yards. And I knew that at some point I would do something with them. And it made sense to make sure I do it in time when I'm putting out this new 365. So I have some more thread packs for sale in my Etsy store. They have about 2/3 of a yard, which would be 24 inches, fully acknowledging some are a little more, some are a little less. It's not precise. It was very interesting as I was doing my whole thread thing, how that last little piece, some of them were 30, 32 inches, and some of them were closer to 20, but the vast majority are hovering around 24 inches. So there are new thread packs available in my Etsy store, and appropriately about 2/3 of the cost of my original 1 yard ones. Now, is this going to cover me for enough, Arlene? All right, here's my thing I want to show you. I made up for myself one of these 2/3 of a yard's thread cards and use this to stitch the 365 remix. Here is, take this out of the bag and better not confuse the two. This is a brand new, ready to be sold. I know it looks like such a mess. I need to kind of neaten it up. 2/3 of a yard of each of these threads. Here's a thread pack where I've already stitched use it. You can barely tell the difference. For most of those squares, I only need to use 1 strand, and most of them I didn't even use an entire strand of 24 inches. The original 365, those circles, the most I ever used was about 12 inches. You could easily, with 2/3 of a yard, stitch both 365 and 365 remix, and I'll make the argument, you probably also have enough to also stitch 324 and 324 the sequel, assuming you're not using super large fabric. It's when you're using this many colors, but only this much of it, you don't need that much thread. A lot of people have shared sort of the fun of, with 324, even to 365 to some extent, of working on it with friends and helping each other out with giving threads. Let me cut off a piece. I have these 4 colors. You have those 4. Let's cut off a piece of each and share. And that's certainly been a way that lots of folks have stitched it in terms of thread usage. But if you want it all contained in one place, and I'll tell you, when I was stitching this 365 remix, it was so much easier to have it all in one place as opposed to going into my these gray boxes here are my working set of DMC. I also have in the DMC box, like a pristine set that I use when I'm designing. But to go into those three boxes and have to pull out and take it out and pull it in, but put it back and then take out the next one, things went much quicker when I had this. So I will put a link to my the listing on my Etsy store to get these. I only have a few. I just made up from the thread I have left, and I'm putting it out there. I will not be doing it again. It was, like I said, it was time consuming. It was a great project. I don't regret it at all. A huge piece of that was financially how I made that happen because of Joann's and coupons, and Michael's isn't enough to make it happen again. So if you are interested, jump on it before they are all sold off. Last sort of topic for today, which is a really fun thing that happened, and I just want to make sure that everyone knows about it. A little over a week ago, I had, was it on a Friday? It was on a Friday. I get notifications when I have a sale in my Etsy store, and when it's a PDF, I'm like, cool, nothing I need to do. And when it's a paper copy, I need to get it in the mail. I try to get in the mail the very next day. And in one day's time, I had 5 people buy the same not new pattern. And it's not the first time this has happened, but in my mind, I'm picturing, because it happens, somebody is sitting maybe at a retreat, maybe just at a stitch day with their friends. Somebody's stitching it. Their friends see it, and everyone at the table says, I want that. And they get on my Etsy store, boom, 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 they have it. So I posted on my Instagram, clearly there's a sale starting if anyone knows anything about this. Okay, within 24 hours, I had like 25 copies were sold, and so many more since then. Luckily, EJ from the Sunshine Stitchers solved the mystery for me. Sunshine Stitchers, EJ, and Shelia, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, did last year, I think last year was the first time, they did a year-long sale where EJ took a pattern, I know it was modern folk embroidery, and I don't know the name of the actual pattern, but I know the hashtag they were using was put a bird on it. I think that was what they were using. It was fun. She just took the pattern and like divided it into 13 parts, and then here month whatever, stitch this, and you had an extra month to kind of catch up because we all get behind on these things. And I have a friend who was participating in it, and I remember her talking about it at some point this spring or summer and saying that it was so helpful to have someone else to break up the chart for them. And I know EJ was doing, I guess EJ and Shelia, forgive me, I'm not completely up on how it worked from last year. They would do monthly Zooms. And I think the idea is if you're stitching on it, join them, but I'm sure there isn't any requirement. You could join stitching, whatever. And so I guess they had recently started talking about that there was a lot of positive feedback about having done this. They wanted to do it again. And so there was brainstorming of what design to choose, and they chose one of mine. So this is Elegant Lace. It came out in 2021. And so I think that can help you understand when I had 5 copies sold in one day and that many more the next day and so many more in the week since then. It's like, whoa, where's the interest of this coming from? And now I know exactly where the interest is coming from. It is a design that I used Flosh, which I've talked about before, for the areas that look more, I don't know how else to describe it. Like, look at the edge here, okay? But there's an awful lot of tent stitches using one strand of floss. And I've done a lot of lace designs. If you aren't familiar, you can go on my Etsy store and just like search lace and you'll see a whole bunch of them. This was one of my earlier ones, and I know it was one of the quickest ones to stitch up because so much of it was one strand tent stitch. Now, obviously I did it as a monochrome design on fabric I chose using white. There's certainly no requirement that lace has to be white. There's no requirement that it all has to be one color. And so my understanding is there's been a lot of fun exploration and chat about different ways people will do different colors. And again, my understanding is that it'll be broken up into 13 parts, which would make it very doable. It is not large. I meant to get out the pattern to be able to tell you. I know EJ talked about it on her recent Flosstube. Maybe it was 170 by 170. Don't quote me on that. But again, so much of it is one strand tent stitch. So if you are interested in joining this sale, I think the plan is to come up with some fun hashtag, but I don't know if it's been decided yet. But you can get a copy of this, again, either a PDF or paper copy sent to you. I've been mailing out a whole bunch, like every day this week, I've been dropping off patterns, which is amazing. It's just so, again, so appreciate as a designer when people support me. Obviously, you can go direct, get it from my Etsy store. It is available in stores. It's not new. I mean, you'll find it out there. You can have a store order it for you, or you can come directly to my Etsy store and join in the fun. If you're not familiar with the Sunshine Stitchers, they put out great floss tubes. They have a Facebook page, a Facebook group. I will put a link to that below if you are interested in joining in and learning more how it goes. I believe it is the sale starts in November 1st. I believe that's the idea. Again, don't quote me on that. But it's just so much fun when something old is new again. That's what's going on here. So I wanted to share that with you, especially if you have an interest, especially if you bought the pattern some time ago. And, you know, we all have patterns we buy and haven't quite gotten to stitching yet. And it might be something you might want to particularly join. But for the time being, my big thing today is the announcement of 365 Remix. I'm excited to get this in your hands. If you start working on it, please tag me if you post on social media. Again, I loved the enthusiasm from so many, particularly so many cross stitchers who had never done something this before, including to some people who have done this before. When I put out 324 the sequel, and I'm hoping there's interest in this as well. All the different stitches. You can learn how to do all kinds of stitches that maybe you've never seen before. All the links are down below. Thank you so much for being here, especially if you make it to the end. I've said this every time. There are so many floss tubers to watch out there, so many great people to get to know, and I appreciate that you've come in here and joined me for a little bit of time today. So thank you so much. Till next time. Bye.